So we're recording. Tonight's NMD United Hangout is on hard conversations and PCA management strategies. One very, very common theme on Living with MD, our Facebook group, is managing PCAs and having conversations that involve, discipline or hiring, firing, interviewing, all of these things that come up, and conflicts and other people in the house that deal with PCAs. I mean, we hear all kinds of great questions, and so I love Alana's responses to a lot of these questions. I think you really hit the nail on the head, and that's why I asked you to co-host with me, because I can't imagine any other person helping me with this. And so that's why we're here tonight. So I'm Emily. I'm from Austin, Texas, 37 years old, and I have spinal muscular atrophy type 2.95.
All right, I'm Alana Terrio. I live in Berkeley, California. I'm 48 years old. I have SMA type 2.
Max, you want to go next? Oh, Max is okay.
Yeah, I'm Max McDonald. Oh, sorry. Do you want to go ahead, or should I?
Yeah, go, Max.
Okay. Well, I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I'm joining the chat because although I'm not in the position of hiring and firing caregivers at the moment. I think that I probably will be in the future, probably within a year to 2 years. And so I'm trying to learn as much about good practices while I can.
Excellent. Who wants to go next? Christine?
If you can't hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can type it out. 5X, I saw you waving. I'm Christine. I'm from Chicago. I have ALS.
Okay.
And 24/7.
Yeah.
24/7 caregivers.
Okay. You have a lot of experience, I'm sure, that you can share with us.
Yeah, I was also my husband's caregiver for 23 years.
So you've been on both sides of this?
Yeah.
Okay.
In my previous life, yep. Although I did not get paid with him.
I missed the last thing you said.
She didn't get paid to take care of him, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for introducing yourself, Christine. And Court, I'm guessing you want me to read what you're writing in the chat, but you guys can all read it. It's right up on the chat if you don't have it up. But Court's from San Antonio, which is so cool because she's really close to me, so maybe I'll get to meet you one day. She said she's just interested in what we all have to say about what in particular not to do. So I thought that was really good. Okay. And Dawn, you want to say hi?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Dawn, and I live in Georgia. I like Emily. I liked how you described it. I have SMA 2.95 or something in that neighborhood. I achieved walking with a walker and ASOs, but it was really just for therapy. It wasn't like a, ran or did anything fun like that. But and I'm interested in tonight's conversation because I would like to hear particularly how folks handle the difficult conversations when you ask your caregiver to do something and they really don't want to do it the way you ask them to do it. kind of like responses that you might give that sort of are good management responses, and kind of keep best practices going on, but just help the caregiver understand. I mean, sometimes I feel frustrated and just want to say, because I damn said so. But, you know, I just want to hear people's thoughts on strategies to handle those type situations.
Okay. Well, thank you for saying that. Elena, do you want to throw out your wisdom regarding that first question?
Well, I'm fortunate that I haven't had a lot of that in recent times, but over the years, I've certainly had a number of workers who didn't want to do something or didn't want to do something the way I wanted to. And one of the ways that I approach it in trying to stay true to my commitment to this being a team effort, I'll say something like, well, I'm used to doing it this way. I'm open to doing it another way if you tell me what you have in mind. Can we try both ways and then decide how we're going to do it? I try to keep it as collaborative as possible. Do you have a specific example, Dawn?
Well, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I think one of the issues that I face is that I work full time, and so I just don't always have a lot of time to debate the issue. And I think it's helpful to keep it a collaborative spirit. I've said the same thing. Well, you know, I'm always welcome to, or you're always welcome to share your ideas or questions with me. I may not always, you know, agree to do the way you suggested, but, you know, I want to hear your feedback. But the struggle for me is that, you know, I just have a lot going on with my job, and I just don't always have time. There's one caregiver in particular who questions a lot of the decisions that I make. And if every caregiver came in and questioned everything, I would only spend my life sort of explaining the decisions I make, and I just don't have time for that. So I guess I'm kind of wanting to know that sort of short and sweet kind of response to help them just do what I need them to do so that I can move on to my job, but yet I would like to let them know that I do care about their thoughts, and so I don't just seem totally uncaring, like I don't care what they think.
Well, and I think you did a really good job of answering your question right there in some respects. I mean, saying to them, hey, look, you know, I don't have time to go and explain why I want it done this way, and I'll be happy to do that when I do have time if you really need to know why. But, and Christine said it, you know, because I said so, and she explained why. But I mean, I don't know if I would say because I said so. I'm just not that's not my personality. But I think it would be, you know, hey, I'm really, really busy right now. I've been doing things this way for a lot of years, and you got to trust me on this one. I need it done this way because this is just how I need it done. And if you really want to talk with me and debate with me about this, can we do this at a different time?
Yeah, I try to escalate the type of conversation at an appropriate level. You know, starting with really casual. You know, I'm open to ideas. I like what Emily said, but I don't have a whole lot of time right now. Can we talk about it when I don't have to go to work or when I don't have people coming over? And, you know, that's a pretty casual way of doing it. I mean, it's a pretty low-key, non-confrontational way. And then maybe the next step is, when you have time, is there a reason that you don't want to do it this way? And I think asking them a question and giving them an opportunity to maybe express concerns they have. A lot of times, someone has said, it actually hurts my back to do this way, and I'm worried I'm going to get injured. And God, I really want to hear that from someone. So I'm very glad they told me that. And then we problem solve. But sometimes it's just a personality thing. People just want a question. So then I take it to the next level, and I ask them, if I need to have you do it the way I want, is this going to be a deal breaker for us continuing to work together? So I go from one level to the next level, and then I take it to a much more serious level that's still conversational and gives them an opportunity to negotiate with me versus walking out. I've never had someone walk out on me.
And I also think that, like, and I'm a very, very lenient, not lenient, what's the word? I'm very chill. So when I don't have a whole list of things that I need done exactly the way I want it. I've kind of let go of control over the years, but I do have like probably a handful of things that mean a lot to me. Like there's a certain routine I have and there's certain things I want, but I would say it's like I prioritize. So depending on the task, like there's some battles I'm not going to fight. Like if they want to put, if they want to put my clothes in cold water instead of warm water, or they have a certain way they want to wash something, like if it's not going to be the end of the world, I'm not going to argue it. But if it's like the big stuff, if it's like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that I'm really picky about.
I'm really picky about the order of operations and how you dress me, because when I roll over to put my brace on, if my pants aren't already on, my knees smash together and it hurts. Like that would be a thing. I'm pretty picky about a lot of the steps in order of operation, or because there are so many steps, I try to stick to the same order because otherwise things get forgotten.
Right.
But whenever you plug in my chair, you also plug in the ventilator and you rearrange something and you dust off the back of the chair. And, there's a few things you have to do, and it's all one chore. And I am picky about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's certain things that I'm much more picky about than other things. There are certain tasks I won't ask certain people to do because I know they'll screw it up. So I'll choose the people that I know are good at that particular thing. Like only one person can shave me. Like that is she knows how to shave me. I don't want to explain it to anybody else. Like another person I have deal with my BiPAP. She does my BiPAP. She's my BiPAP maintenance person. And that is her job. And then other people are good at some other things, like my one PCA, she's great with my hair. So she works mornings, and so I try to structure things so that way, people are working towards their strengths as well. So, Don, do you have any more? I'm sorry?
I put together a letter that I gave people after I hired them. Mm-hmm. And in that letter I say, I've been doing this, for a long time, and I've come up with ways that work for me. And I'd love to hear your ideas, but let's stick with the way I explain, so that we can talk about alternatives later. Right. Especially at the training phase, I try to remind them that this is how I do it. Now, the situation I had with one of my caregivers, it was just like a really nice, silly, stupid situation. And she said that, well, it's kind of personal, but I had a Viking piece of skin on my face. Let's get a piece of Viking skin on my face. I just.
I'm missing the last thing.
Yeah, I'm missing it too. I was trying to see if I could catch it, and then I was missing. I'm sorry, Christine.
That's okay. Let me write it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, I noticed, is that Nancy in the 512?
Yes.
Hey, Nancy.
Hi.
How are you?
I was struggling with the computer, so I opted for the phone.
Well, that's awesome. So you can't see us though, right? You can only hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're talking to Emily.
Yeah, I know that.
And Alana is here, and Max McDonald is here. Christine is here. Court from San Antonio is here, and Dawn from close to Atlanta, right, Dawn?
Yes.
Cool. And she's here as well. And so, Nancy, do you want to introduce yourself? Because I don't think people know what a badass you are yet. So you should totally introduce.
Nancy Crozer from Texas, retired, sort of, involved in a lot of advocacy for personal attendance and wages and training and retention and recruitment. So I spent the day at the Senate trying to get wages up. So that's my thing.
Nancy is involved with a consumer-directed services work group. She is appointed by the Director of Health and Human Services. I was in it for a little while, but I had to back out because of my job duties. So I've been trying to carry the torch a little bit, Nancy. I try.
I know.
Anyway, so Nancy, is there any questions that you have that you want to bring up or issues that you think we should address tonight?
Well, I kind of want to know what people are doing to advocate for recruitment and retention in their prospective states so that I can share the information with our Health and Human Services folks to say, you know, this is how it's going to work. It's not just a higher salary, you know. There's got to be something else that will help us to recruit better folks and attendants.
I think it's a little bit off topic, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But I do think that the missing piece in the advocacy efforts that are happening around the country is that they're not training consumers, service recipients, on how to be employers. They're not training us how to recruit. They're not training us how to do paperwork. They're not training us how to supervise. And the topic tonight is how to have a difficult conversation with your personal assistants, whether they're formal or informal. And one of the things that keeps me most busy is people ask me all the time, I need to fire someone, or I'm having problems with someone, and nobody knows how to do this stuff until they do trial and error, make mistakes, and maybe be a really crappy employer. I mean, I was a crappy employer for the first 5 years that I had to do it, and so I think that's a big missing piece. SEIU, which is the biggest attendant union around the country, is trying to get state funding to train workers. The trainings suck. They're pretty rudimentary, and nobody's putting money into training consumers how to be employers. So that's probably the biggest advocacy thing that I think needs to happen. And I see nothing happening in that arena.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because that I haven't heard before.
I would agree with that. I think if you look at Living with MD and the questions, I mean, a majority of questions that we get have to do with management and the lack of experience at that, and this kind of fear of it, because it's daunting, you know. It's like, okay, you have this great opportunity to hire your people and to bring them in and manage things and take control of your life, but we're not going to show you how to do that. Like, you know, we're not going to explain to you how that works or what that looks like, or like, you know, conflicts and recruiting itself. It's like, I love that Berkeley, don't you guys have a backup a backup thing where if your PCs don't show up, you can call a number and somebody will come out and help you? Is that?
We have 24/7 medication. Yeah.
See, and every single city should have programs like that set up. Like, and we're gonna end up having to do it grassroots style. Like there was she's not here tonight. She said she was coming, but a person I've been talking to online, she moved to Austin. She's trying to get her care set up, and she was like stranded the other day, and I was about to get her over to my house so I could get her some care, like with my attendants. Like it's just like a grassroots, like helping one another, kind of thing. But as something more formal, I think would be really great for a lot of these cities, like in Austin should have one. We should have a backup, a nonprofit or something out there where people can volunteer and donate hours and help people if they get, totally left. It doesn't make, we can model it after Berkeley's program. It's not like it doesn't exist. I mean, there's a model to steal from. It's just a matter of stealing, and so, I mean, I don't know. It just makes more sense. The reason why I like these hangouts and I like doing this is because I just feel like this is, it's kind of a grassroots, off the charts kind of way of dealing with stuff like this, these issues. So, anyway, hey, Nancy, have you ever fired anyone?
Oh, yeah.
You have?
Several.
Oh,
yeah.
Can you tell us a good firing? Tell us a story of how you properly fired someone in the best way possible.
Well, the best way is, when you get to the point where you really have to sit down and talk to them about the issues at hand, and if it doesn't improve, I put it in writing, and that's the first step. And if it continues, your second letter will be your termination letter. And it'll state every reason, or whatever we've talked about, and on this date, and you're not following, the rules, and I'm going to have to let you go. And it's not like they didn't have a chance.
So you do kind of a strikes, like you base it on strikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to use something. Otherwise, it'll get real mamby-pamby. And
how do you deal with like, let's say you're firing someone, do you start looking for someone to replace the person that you're going to be firing? Like, do you kind of have a gut feeling that they're going to get another letter? Or do you do you start to replace them ahead of time? Or do you just what do you do when that happens? Like, how do you get out safely?
Well, I have a network. I make sure that my network is around and on the alert, just in case they bolt. I've had people just bolt. But if I feel like it's gotten to the paper writing stage, I'm already starting to look for people. I'm gonna hit up my network. I'm gonna hit up all my hotspots. I'm gonna start running ads, doing, Craigslist, you name it. It'll hit the paper.
Alana, do you have a firing story that you'd like to share? Have you ever had to let anyone go?
Oh, I've been doing this for 32 years. I've let a lot of people go. I've let people go on the spot because they've shown up high or drunk. I generally said, you need to go home and we'll talk about it tomorrow. And then the next day pardon me. The next day we have a conversation about, I have a policy that you don't show up high or drunk. I'd rather you call in sick if that was your situation, but you cannot come to work. So that would be one thing. And that's a deal breaker, and I don't hire them back or give them a second chance. I've actually had a woman run up to me in the street a year after I fired her for being drunk, and she hugged me and said that was the nicest thing that anybody had ever done for her. It was because she said it really got her into the treatment program that her partner had been trying to convince her she needed. It was a little reality check for her. The more difficult ones are when someone's generally doing a pretty good job, but there's an attitude problem, or there's just constant messing up of little things, or some disrespect or disregard of a process that needs to happen. And I'm not as formal as Nancy is. I mean, in my professional life, where I've been managing people in an office setting, I use that type of technique with the written warnings and the 2-week periods of corrective action plans. And I do that in my professional life, and I just feel really resistant to doing that in my home. So I'm very verbal, and I hire people with a lot of communication up front about my style. So right up front, I'll say, if something's not working for you, you need to let me know. If you're uncomfortable, if you're frustrated, whatever. And if the minute I sense reluctance to do something, or someone not being happy about being here, I just ask them up front, you seem like you don't really want to be here, or you've got one foot out the door 10 minutes after your shift starts. What's going on? And I'll have that level of conversation with them pretty early in the game. And usually it either solves the problem or it gives them permission to resign, and with a timeline of 2 weeks notice or 3 weeks notice. I've almost always been able to do it that way. It seems like they're not happy here often means they have a shift that's not working for them. And I'll say, okay, I've got an opening coming up in 2 months. Can you hang in there for 2 months, and we'll shift you to the mornings? And usually people are really happy because I've listened to them. I've paid attention to what they need. And as long as they can hold on for a little while longer, I can shuffle their schedule. Or some people don't feel comfortable with certain duties. I'll say, okay, thanks for letting me know. Let me switch this to something. Let me have somebody else do this thing that you're not comfortable with. So that's worked out really well. The most difficult thing, excuse me, is when someone's afraid that I'm going to be mad at them if they want to quit. And it's happened more often than not, and it's happened with the younger people more than the older people. They're so afraid that my feelings are going to be hurt. And part of the perspective, I think part of it is they don't really think about, I've been doing this for over 30 years. If my feelings are hurt every time somebody resigns, I'd just be a little puddle of goo. You know, I would never be able to get through my day. So I bring it up for them, and I start the conversation. Oh, what are you planning on doing? Are you wanting to go to school, or are you looking for a different job? Is this just not fun? Are you bored? You know, I mean, giving them permission to say what's going wrong really goes a long way. I've only had one adversarial termination probably in the last 8 years or so, with someone who did not understand why I fired him, even though I was able to demonstrate to him that he had been late 8 out of 16 days that he showed up for work. And when I say late, I mean 20 to 45 minutes late. He was really late. And I said, you know, this is absolutely unacceptable. And I hired someone else before I fired him. I hired a temp, and he told me 3 times in tears, begging for his job back. And that was really painful. He was a sweet guy. He was not reliable. He worked for another disabled person full time. And that person was honestly his bigger priority. And that's just how it is in this work. You have someone that you do most of the time with, and you've worked with them for a long time, they're a bigger priority. And it just wasn't working for us. So him crying and begging for his job back. It was very heartbreaking. And we still run into each other in public, and he still won't look at me or talk to me. But it's okay. It's okay. That was about 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
I wanted to just read, Christine wrote an example about how she had a small piece of dried skin on her face. She asked her attendant to pull it off. The attendant refused and said she wouldn't do anything that was going to hurt her. She tried to explain that the risk was on her, the consumer, not the attendant. Christine said, she wasn't asking her to put vodka in her G tube. But if she did ask her to do that, she'd expect her PCA to put vodka in her G tube, and the PCA didn't agree, and they had a semi-good conversation about how her refusal strips my dignity, which I thought that's a really nice way to put it. Strips my dignity. It's very hard to have someone as an adult look at you and treat you like you're a child, or that you're not competent enough to make your own decisions. That's very hurtful, and it makes you feel very powerless. And the last thing you want to do is have your power taken away from you. We have so much already that we have to, we're already kind of behind in a lot of ways as far as strength and power goes. And so to have someone take our sense of control away is very kind of traumatizing at times. I have never had to have I'll be honest, I've never had to fire anyone. I've had very, very great experiences with my PCAs over the years. But I did have one experience when I was younger, when I was about, I want to say 19. I was working at a summer camp, and I was a project director at a camp for kids with disabilities. And I was getting paid $250 a week. And instead of taking that money and giving it to myself, I was so afraid of losing my SSI that I gave that money I had them pay my attendant. So I stayed at the camp all week, and I had an attendant that was basically working for me, but I was working for the camp. It was kind of a twisted situation. And so the girl that was helping me all summer, she was my only person, and I was giving her my paycheck every week, and she was horrible to me. She would say things to me like, if I knew you outside of this camp, I would never even talk to you. Or she would ask me really demeaning questions about my body, and and she asked me if I got my period, and if my body worked like other people's bodies, and she was just really insensitive, and she was mean to me. She told me I had to go to bed at 9 o'clock. And I just remember she just took away a lot of my feelings of power. She accused me of being a junk food junkie. She's just mean to me all the time. And I got really upset. And I remember I called my dad, and I said, Dad, I'm done with this job. I'm done giving her my paycheck. I want to come home. I don't want to work anymore. I'm over it. And my dad was like, you're not coming home. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, no, you're not coming home. You're not quitting your job because of this person. You're gonna stay with this girl. And I was like, I can't handle her. And he's like, well, then you're gonna have to tell her. You're gonna have to talk to her and work this out, because you're not coming home. He was forcing me to be at this camp all summer. So I remember I went in and I said to her, I am not a dish. I am not a dish that you can just wash and leave and resent and put in the little, dish drying rack and walk away. I said, I am a person. I have feelings. You talk to me horribly. And I remember I just went off, and I just told her, I said, I'm ready to quit this job. I'm ready to, and quitting this job, you'll be fired. And I said, and I don't want to leave this job, but you're putting me in this position. And so she apologized, and she was like, I think we can figure out a way to work it out. And so she was civil to me for the rest of the summer, and we managed. We didn't like each other, but we managed. And at the end of the summer, we parted ways and never spoke to each other ever again. But I remember being my father forcing me to have that conversation, and he refused to let me quit. And he said, if you quit, you're letting her win, and you can't let her win. You've got to go in there and defend yourself. And I remember thinking to myself that we're not a dish. We're not like, people can hate their jobs, but they can't hate this job. They can't. If they do, it's not going to go well. So, anyway, sorry. That was so.
Christine, I was wondering, were you able to work it out with this person? Did they continue working for you?
Yes.
Good.
But she's one that I'm constantly thinking, well, maybe this isn't working. She has a hard time hearing me when I talk loud.
Wait, I'm not hearing. She has a hard time, what?
Hearing me. Responding when I call her.
Oh, okay. I hear.
Kind of emotional.
Can you tell me what she said? I'm sorry. She has a hard time.
She has a hard time responding when she calls. She doesn't hear her very well.
Oh, okay.
But I don't have that problem with my other caregivers.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you don't know if you're being ignored or what.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't think she's ignoring, but I told her that this is only a problem with her, and we need to find a way to resolve it. But it keeps moving.
I think also when she said that she was so afraid to hurt you, I think that some people are really scared of that. And I don't know if they had past trauma where maybe they were helping someone and they really did injure someone. One of my best friends dropped me. 2010. She got me up in the morning. I was giving her some extra hours, and some hours because she didn't have a job, and she dropped me, and I broke my leg. And she was a disaster after that. Like she was so afraid of me. Like she was so afraid to hurt me. And so sometimes I think when you end up with, in a situation where the PCA, where they're afraid to hurt you like that, where she's afraid to pull that dead skin off, it's like some people are going to, like my attendant Nemo, she'll toss me around. Like she doesn't fear hurting me because she hasn't, and she's never really done any major damage, but she'll kind of be rougher with me because she knows what I can take. And so there's some people that are just like so gentle. They don't want to, get in it,
Mm-hmm. I find at first most people are too gentle.
Right.
But I have to kind of break them in.
Can you say that? But I missed that.
Oh, she just said that, it's okay, but, sometimes people are so gentle that you have to kind of break them in. Like you have to kind of, like teach them your tolerance. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dawn, do you feel like we helped answer that question, I guess, from earlier and just in our conversation so far? I don't know if Dawn's yeah, there.
Yeah, I'm here. I just was unmuting my phone. Yeah, I think that was helpful. And I did think of a specific example. I don't know if that would help, but so I've have a situation with a caregiver. So my caregivers go with me to my job every day. They drive me to my job, and I live so far from the job. Essentially, they have to work the entire day with me. It's not where I can just schedule them on, to come in at a certain time. They have to pretty much come, take me, drive me to work, help me, with my needs throughout the day. and then, you know, drive me back home and then help me with my shower and get me into bed and all that good stuff. But anyway, so this is an issue with a caregiver who I really find her, frankly, to be a bit lazy, if I can just be blunt. She always tries to cut corners with anything that I ask her to do. But so I have a cup with you know, that I put my drink in the morning with a very long straw, and I have several accommodations on my chair where I have a service dog, I have a laptop mount, and then I can only drive in a certain area. So what I'm basically saying is ideally, I would have an assistive device that would just hold the cup on my chair where I could just bring it around myself. But I don't know how I'd work that out on my current setup just because of space. But anyway, she wants, she has to help me bring my work things, which is very normal in the environment where I work. I mean, people bring suitcases to work because of where we work. It's downtown Atlanta, and my job has me going in different places throughout the day. So I kind of have to, and I have to ask them to help me bring my things like other people do. Anyway, she doesn't want to carry the cup, and so she just, was asking these ridiculous things about, I'm trying to think of an example of what she wanted, but something as simple as that, I just need her to just do it. And that reality is she doesn't want to do it only because she has to remember this, and part of, to me, her job description is helping me get my things to where I need them to go. And she just doesn't want to have to carry it. And I just don't think that's acceptable. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that situation.
Well, have you asked her, why don't you want to carry this?
Yeah, and she just says, I don't want to have to carry this around, and I'm afraid I'll forget it.
And I guess
I would go deeper then. I would be like, well, what do you think I'm going to do if you forget it?
That's a difference.
And then if she says, well, do you think maybe does she think you'd fire her? Like, what would be the consequence if she forgot to pick up the cup?
Right. Well, and again, this goes back to the laziness factor, right, because we did forget it one day. And so I didn't fire her. I just said, okay, well, let's go back and get the cup. So I got back to my car in the parking deck and realized that I had left it back, in the building I was just in. So we had to basically walk back into the building. It wasn't like we had to walk 10 miles. It was just, a couple blocks over, but from where, I was parked. But the issue was, again, I feel laziness because, my God, we had to walk back. It was still part of her shift. It didn't make her late. And in my opinion, that was perfectly reasonable for me to ask her to do, because I'm not going to leave my cup, because it was kind of where I work. It's kind of a public place. It wasn't like it was at my desk where I could just get it the next day. If it was something like that, I'd be like, no big deal. But it was kind of, I have a very certain cup that works in my van, in my cup holder, and have a hard time finding those cups. So, it was important enough to me that I wanted to go back and get the cup. But the only consequence to her was just her having to walk back with me and get it.
Well, one thing that occurs to me, and I don't know if this will be helpful to you, but when I start feeling things about someone who's working with me, for instance, if I'm starting to say someone's lazy or they're flaky or when my impression about them and the quality of their work starts getting negative, I actually start thinking about trying to find someone new. Because if I'm having that attitude about them, it's going to come through in how I communicate with them, how I interact with them, what I expect of them. And often I tend to allow the behavior to happen more because I just don't want to deal with the problem. So for me, if I was saying about someone that they were lazy to myself, I would probably try 2 different strategies. 1, start looking for someone else, and 2, start letting them know that I'm really not happy with the bigger picture. And I might do that saying, it seems like you're really reluctant to make the extra effort when we do forget something, or help me solve the problem about where the cup can go. Maybe if you're worried we're going to forget it, maybe we should be putting it in my backpack. Or, I think doing the problem solving more directly about it seems like you're reluctant to do things or have to redo things if there's a mistake. I'm okay with you making a mistake or you forgetting something, but we still have to go fix it, and it seems like you don't want to. Like, I might dive into that more and also privately explore replacing a worker. Because if you're already saying she's lazy, you don't feel good about her.
That's definitely, I like that answer. But there's another strategy that you could go with on this one. You could be like me, where I'm horribly sarcastic at times, and sometimes like I try to bring humor into it. So I might have her like carry like 3 or 4 or 5 cups one day as like a joke. Like I would just like, I'd be like, yeah, I need you to bring like all of these 5 cups with you today. And kind of make it like a funny thing, or like, or be like, oh my God, like I'm so tired of this fucking cup, and like just like that.
Emily, you're a cornball. You're a total cornball.
I would like get like one of those red wagons, and I would like have her like tote the cup in the red wagon or something like that. Like I would just like you could take it. You could, and I totally agree, because Lalena's right. If you're feeling these things about her, it's probably deeper than just the cup. Like it's probably like there's something deep inside that you're just resenting her and you're annoyed with her, and it's probably someone that's not a good fit. So probably, yeah, you should look for something else. But if you would want to, if there's other good qualities that you want to preserve, and maybe you just want to like kind of address it, but in a funny way, and just kind of call out her laziness without being mean, but just kind of being funny about it, you could do something that extreme, like make it into like a joke,
Right. Well, and there are other qualities that I do want to preserve, and frankly, and I know this isn't an advocacy discussion, but I'll just say that in an ideal situation, I understand your point about looking for someone else, but part of the problem here in Georgia is, I think part of it is she gets burned out too, because it's not really easy to find caregivers. I live in a rural area, even though I work in the city, and so just finding people, it's not always easy to find a replacement, and people who maybe start out as really good people, if they're having to do a lot of hours, maybe they start to get burned out. And I think there's, I've always found if you can have variety in the staff, it's easier for me to deal with management issues whenever I have other choices. I just feel more empowered, but unfortunately that's not always the situation. But I actually like Alana's suggestion about, because kind of what you said, it was kind of to put it back on her, really, to say, well, you seem to, I can't remember exactly how you worded it, Alana, but it was kind of putting it back on her, to where it's like, why are you having such a problem? I mean, I'm not going to fire you. Yes, you made a mistake, and we have to deal with that, but so what's so horrible about that?
Right. Yeah. I think having a real conversation, and are you worried about this? Maybe we can come up with another solution. maybe emptying out the cup and putting it in my backpack when we travel, or maybe having a spare cup in my bag and one that we leave on my desk. I mean, engaging her in the problem solving, especially it sounds like you do want to keep her with you, and that you don't have a lot of options with other people. I think engaging in as much creative problem solving as you can with her, not just at her, I think will help.
Right. And do you have a suggestion on how to sort of put it to her that, well, you know, this is part of your job description? So she says to me just flat out, well, I just don't want to have to carry it. You know, just what's a good way just to kind of say that where you're, you know, being direct, but not,
But, yeah,
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be starting out with you've already done the why don't you want to carry it, and she's afraid that she's going to forget it. But it's actually really important. And I mean, I would say, but it's really important for me to have this because A, B, and C, I get dehydrated, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to waste paper cups. It's, you know, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons you can give her. And
Right.
And just to say, and I'm really counting on you to do all these little things that I need help with. I'm sorry, it's frustrating, but this is part of what I need you to do. And let's find a way to make it easier for you. I guess that's what I would do. I mean, if she can't do that, this very tiny little issue does represent a bigger problem that may not be out in the open. If she can meet you halfway with that, then everything's golden. You'll be fine. But if she's still resisting, there's a bigger problem that you might want to get into with her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it may not be that she's lazy. It may be that she thinks you're too picky or that you're unreasonable or that, you know, I mean, who knows? I mean, you'll only find out if you ask. So
Right.
I think you need to find out if it's a bigger problem than just the very small thing about a stupid cup, you know?
Exactly. I like that, though. And sometimes just hearing the way you say that, I mean, it does help me to kind of think about how to couch things with her.
Okay, good. I'm glad that could help. And you can always text me if you need help. I'm in the group, so.
Thank you.
So, Nancy, I see that you pop in now and then. Do you want to say something?
Me?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I see your thing light up. I know that we've had one question in the chat from Court, and Jasmine's talking too a little bit, so I just wanted to kind of go over what they're typing. So Court was asking about San Antonio. Basically, she said, how did you all transition from having a head of household as your main, and she said character, but I think she meant caregiver, to hiring PAs without 24-hour care? Obviously, my head of household would still need to help me during certain hours, but they would need to get another job to offset the hours that they used to work for me as a PA. Or rather, Emily, have you ever seen anyone in Texas without a tracheotomy get 24-hour care? And so there's a couple different things there. So I think she's talking about, like, what are some strategies if you're not going to get 24-hour care? Like, what are some ways that you can offset the lack of hours if you need more than what you're getting? And then does anyone in Texas get 24-hour care? And Nancy, I think you can help me on this one. I don't think I've never met a person in Texas that gets 24-hour care, even with trachs. I've met people with trachs and they still don't have 24-hour care. Like, that's just not something Texas has embraced. Am I right?
The reason part of this doesn't get funded is because of the high medical approach. You know, they all have their liability issues, and so it should be something, quote unquote, that should be under nursing home care.
Right.
So we do not want that. So if there is like an independent living center or somewhere you can go, during the day while people are around, in the event that something occurs, at least you're around people.
I told her roommates. I've always had roommates. I like living with people. So I feel more comforted to know that if anything were to happen, I have a roommate or two to fall back on if I need it. But honestly, I get 43 hours a week, which isn't much. It's roughly 6 hours a day. And I break it, and then I've just always been able to figure it out. It's a challenge. It really is. You have to be very creative about it. And it's sad because they look at you, the more you need, the less they feel like you should be independent in your community. So like if I ask for more hours, then obviously why am I working? Why am I in the community? If it's like you can't have it both ways. You either have to, if you get 24 hours, you have to be in a nursing home and being like completely disabled 100%, or you get way less than that because that's how, that's why you're independent or whatever. Like you can't, they don't seem to like understand that it can be combined.
Is Vicki on the line or in the chat?
No, Vicky's not online or in the chat.
Okay. She might know more on that. She's got quite the system set up.
But she doesn't have 24-hour care. And I remember in another page, she was very adamant and said that she feels that people that get 24-hour care are, basically it's not necessary. So
what?
It was a great argument.
No, I still don't really need 24-hour care. I am on event, but I don't use it twice. But I've watched a lot of people here in California. We don't have the same funding problems. People are able to get 24-hour care no matter what their medical needs are. It takes a long time to get it, but we do have access to it. But I still see people, particularly people with disabilities, teaming up in subsidized housing. For example, two people who need to use personal assistance getting a Section 8 certificate for a 3-bedroom apartment and having an attendant in the 3rd bedroom who's that backup person in addition to whatever hours that they can get. I mean, in that scenario, it's still really important that that live-in person has 2 full days and nights off a week, that they can go, they can do things and not worry, and they have a pull-out couch for whoever's staying overnight to make sure everybody's okay. In some scenarios, it's worked very well for both the disabled roommates to have a high level of care needs, and in other situations, it's been better if one has a high level of care need and the other one has a lower level of care need. I've also seen disabled people providing care for their partners. Nick Dupre in New York has his partner who's also disabled, and she's their backup, and she's able to suction him if he needs it, or help with the ventilator if something goes down. So a lot of creative roommate configurations are often the way to do it, and realizing that maybe people with disabilities are the better choice for a roommate than just non-disabled roommates, where it can create a very strange dependency kind of relationship. So I think really thinking about what you're asking of people and making sure that everybody has the time off that they need also.
I went to college at Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania. It's up in Pennsylvania, obviously, and it's in the snow belt, and it's a total shithole, but it has 24-hour care in the dorms. And so what you do is you have your own dorm room, you get your own single room, and then there's a room in the hallway that you're in, and there's a bunch of PCs in that room, and you go in and you sign up for whenever you need to go to the bathroom. You have like a little call button, and you can call them in the middle of the night. So for 4 years while I was in college, I didn't have to worry about my disability. I went out till 3 or 4 in the morning. I peed whenever I wanted. I had people over. I did what I wanted. I just had to live in the dorms. And they had a wheelchair repairman on campus. They had vans that would take you everywhere. They had, I mean, it was amazing. And my dad again forced me to go to Edinburgh, and I didn't want to go because it was in the snow belt. I wanted to move to Berkeley, and I wanted to live in California. And he was like, just go there for 4 years and suck it up, make the best out of it. And I did, and I loved it, and I made a lot of great friends. And then when I graduated, I freaked out because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go out and get back home where I only get 2 hours of personal care attendance a day. And I was really scared. And so I just said, you know what, screw this. I'm just going to go somewhere. And I pulled Austin out of a cup, and I moved down here, and I made the best of it. But it trained me. Like, that college totally trained me and got me going. And if you talk to people in Living with MD that went to Edinburgh University, many of them are living independently now, and they're doing great. And I think that school really does a good job of that. And so I'm very fortunate for that experience, because I got to see what it was like to have it all and to not think about my disability. And it allowed me to see a bigger picture and think outside the box. And so once again, my father, basically has forced me to and saved my ass at the same time. So he's a good guy. Anyway, anybody have any other questions that they want to bring up? Or Jasmine, I know you were talking about, I don't know, you were talking about, I've been told I'm too specific. Do you want to kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah. It doesn't happen often, but like, I have like specific ways that I like everything done. And if it's not done in that way, then I don't let do it. So this is all new lessons, not the old ones. And they know. And if it's like new lessons, it'll be like, just so specific. And I got a little offended by that. Because it's like, I'm not specific because I like things done a certain way.
Jasmine, one thing that I would really encourage you to do is embrace your pickiness. Embrace the specificity. When I'm interviewing someone, I am very clear. I am really picky. I like things to be done certain ways. I hope you don't mind. I tend to not be a bossy person, but I'm also teased for being bossy, and I really try to be fair. But I give people a really big heads up. I have very particular needs. I like things done my way. This is my home. And I think when they come in knowing that already, then we can joke about it. We can say, I can say, all right, I'm going to be a picky bitch today. I need you to do this stuff this way. And it really lightens up the mood. Now, this does not work with family members.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it does not work. And once in a while, it will work with family members. But generally, this is not advice for family negotiations. And I don't have any advice about how to deal with families. I moved away from my family when I was 16, and I was never going back. So.
Well, and I think, honestly, I think that PCA management also is, the younger you get, the younger it happens to you. The younger you start doing it, the easier it is. I think that, I haven't lived at home with my parents since I was, 18. I went to that college, which, was perfect and helpful and everything. But then after I got it, every summer I had to work at that camp, and where I had to I wasn't allowed to stay at home. So I was forced into managing stuff very young. And I think that was really, really important for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It was a sink or swim.
Yeah, this is Nancy. I agree. There was a lot of pushing and shoving into the situation of having to work with attendants and not go home. But I'm glad they did. Because every time I hire a person, there's something new on my list that I didn't see, that I found out, okay, we're putting this on the list because I have a job description. I mean, I treat it like a business because I'd rather have the attendant as my employee than a friend. Only because that's where we get off. And when I go to the point of where, I'm teetering between, I think I'm going to have to let them go, or they're teetering on the fact that they want to leave the job, it becomes a very emotional thing. But in the long run, it's a business. And I would rather keep him as a friend than as an employee. And I've got lots of friends.
I wanted, what was it? Oh shoot, it left me. Oh, I hate when my thoughts leave me. Oh crap. All right, whatever. Alana, go ahead. Talk. Let me, I'll remember.
Well, I'm wondering, we're getting past an hour, and I'm wondering if anybody else has questions that they want addressed.
Okay, no questions from court. Max, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I've really enjoyed the discussion, though. It's been great.
I think it's been a really good discussion. Yeah, I really had, I wanted to talk about this. One thing that I have found that was kind of one of the hardest I've done it twice now, but some of the hardest things I've ever had to do is have a PCA that's also a second language learner. My attendant, Nemo, who's been with me 15 years, when she started working with me, she had very limited English. She's from Ethiopia and Somalia. And so she was her English or vocabulary was very limited. And right now I'm working with a woman who speaks Spanish. She's a Mexican woman. And she's 50 something years old, and she's not about to learn English. She's kind of over that whole thing. So it's weird because I don't speak Spanish, and I don't speak Somalian, and I don't speak Amharic, and I do have training as a teacher of a second language. So I kind of have some strategies on how to teach. So I've been really having to use my teaching skills. But one thing I value, and one thing we don't have debates. I don't debate my routine with anyone because I can't. We can't have a debate. And everything is so strategically the same. So every morning, I wake up in the same way. I sit up in the same way. I get, and because everything has to be exactly the same, because if any change in the routine happens, I can't explain it. So I had a girl that was my attendant that she spoke Spanish. And so she trained my latest attendant. And so she was speaking in Spanish the whole time I was going through training with her. And she explained, well, Emily sits on the toilet, takes about 20 minutes, give her iPhone, and leave her alone. And so like she learned all of these little idiosyncrasies and my weird picky routines, and there's no discussion because it's just we can't talk. So I find that that it's been really good. Like, so I almost say, you know, I wouldn't be afraid to work with someone that is a second language learner, because it can be kind of a really fun, an interesting experience, and there's not a lot of arguing.
And I had to make the decision a while ago when I started losing my mobility in my hands to no longer hire people who were not fluent in English. I had to make, it was a really hard decision. I live in a university town. There's people from all over the world, and I met fabulous people, and I would point and gesture, et cetera, et cetera. But now my health is not stable enough, and there are changes in my routine pretty regularly, and I have a high level of medical care, catheter, IV, ventilator, and I can't point. And as soon as you cannot point, you cannot deal with a crisis. It's like, oh my God, I can't even, you know, I can't point to that thing, and there's no way you're going to know what that thing is called because you don't know the language. So I had to make the difficult decision to stop hiring people unless they had.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I was like, if I get a Hoyer lift, I have no idea how I'm going to explain that to Victoria. Like, I have no idea how I'm going to explain if I get if I get an SPC. No idea how I'm going to explain that safely. So I can totally get what you're saying. Like, I get that. And when I worked with Nemo 15 years ago, my body, everything about me was so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I was living in a different environment where there was less workers available for me to hire, I might get off my lazy American butt and learn another language. But I mean, I should know Spanish or Chinese or something, but I'm lazy and we don't get taught that in the public schools. So I'm lucky to live somewhere where I am able to hire people who are English speakers.
Well, yeah, and I mean, how much do the attendants make in your area?
The state in my county is the highest paying county in the state, and they pay $12.50 an hour. And then a lot of us supplement it. So I'd say, you know, my workers are making $15.50 an hour.
I do the same thing. I supplement. My hardest shifts, I supplement. So my morning shift, it's very hard to find someone who's going to want to come to my house at 6 o'clock in the morning to make $9.25 an hour and to do that reliably to get me to work every day, with no benefits, no retirement, no health insurance, nothing. So
we have benefits here, which is helpful, but the tricky thing is now a lot of the cities are establishing a minimum wage of $15 an hour citywide, and the state so far is not being held to those minimums. So all of a sudden, as an attendant care, you know, I mean, $12.50 an hour is great to a lot of people around the country, or even around the state. Other counties only make $9.50 an hour, but here minimum wage is starting at $15 an hour. So it's going to really change the nature.
Yeah, I supplement. I pay an additional $60 to my morning attendant.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what that works out to be an hour. That's a lot more. That's considerable. And I mean, I work a job and I'm able to do that, and I'm doing it under the table. But I mean, I've got to do it. I have no choice. I've got it. And like everyone's like, you know, she's okay. You know, she's not the best attendant I've ever had. And everyone like is like, why don't you just go get somebody else? I'm like, who's going to come to my house at 6 o'clock in the morning for $9.25 an hour? Like, find me that person. No one's going to do it. So anyway, it's frustrating, but you know, you gotta. I mean, you just have to. That's why it kind of shocks me, because I always think about that. I always think about that fact, and so I put up with a lot more than I think some people do. Like I think that's why I'm so flexible, because it's like I can't imagine if I put myself in their shoes, and I think to myself, like, who would do that? Like, I would never do that. Would never get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go get someone out of bed, like for $9 an hour. Never. Like, I don't know.
I have a question related to that.
Yeah.
For those of it, I'm open a lot of you got some ideas. Can you read that up, please?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Go ahead, Delana.
All right. Christine wrote, because it is so exhausting and so many unknowns to find and train someone new, I have tended to keep people longer or put up with little stuff which adds up, and I don't know when to say when. How do you know when it's time to start over? For me, it's when the negative starts to outweigh the positive. And depending on what's going on in my life, when I'm sick, I'm much less likely to want to try and hire somebody. So I balance that in. So I just weigh the pros and cons. And if there are more pros than cons, it's usually okay. But every pro, every con has a different weight. If I'm dreading the so and so's shift to come to work, that's when I know it's time. If I'm dreading, it's like, oh no, I have to deal with this person. That's when it's time. To either take corrective action or let them go. The personal dread. That's how I've known when I needed to quit jobs. That, oh God, I have to go in, I don't want to go, and that's when I know it's time to start looking for another job. So it's the same strategy.
Well, not so much now, but I've kind of dealt with that in the past, like just finding myself at a faster heartbeat and more levels of stress when certain people are working. And so when I noticed that, I really questioned myself, well, what's going on and what needs to be addressed, because obviously something needs to be addressed.
Exactly. And that's what you say about the higher levels of stress. I notice all of a sudden I turn into a bigger control freak.
Yeah, me too.
Don't move my foot that way. Ow, ow, ooh, ee, ah. And I notice I'm getting more tense, so everything's hurting. I flinch before they touch me, even though they're not hurting me. I don't ever let people work for me who hurt me, but even when they're moving me, I'm apprehensive, and it's not because they're doing anything wrong. It's because I don't want them to touch me because I don't like them or I'm pissed at them, so I pay attention to my body.
I start to kind of I'm doing that right now a lot right now with my morning attendant. Nemo is my go-to. Nemo's been with me forever, and so I start to like want her to fill in, like so if Victoria gets a little sick, like if she sneezes, I'm like, are you gonna call off? Do I need to call Nemo? Do I need to get Nemo in here? Like, I really don't want her to come, but it's like I just have to like there are mornings where it's really frustrating, and I just have to kind of like take a deep breath and like just kind of it's amazing how smart we have to become to manage to do this. Like, it's amazing how introspective and how intrapersonal we have to it's our skill set in this department is probably greater than you could ever even imagine. Like the therapy we put ourselves through and the communication strategies that we have is like, I can't imagine anyone else being able to do this as well. Like, I mean, I don't know. I just feel I have to be very proud of myself, because there are times where I really want to quit and I have to like psych myself into a place where I can keep doing this and not let it get to me.
And I think it's really important to recognize our successes and recognize when we're really good at this. But as an employer, we also really need to always ask, how can I do this better? I mean, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and there are still things I can do better. But Nancy, you were talking about some of the more professional job-like strategies you use, more formal contracts or formal letters of disciplinary action and things like that. And that's always on my back burner. Like, I know that at some point that might be a better way for me to do it. And I have done it in the past. And right now what I'm doing is working very well for me. But certain situations might change. So I always have to be on top of it. How can I do it better? And now when we're in these Facebook groups, like the Living with MD group, I am stunned by how many posts go up by people saying, how do I tell my attendant I don't like how they do A or B or C? And these are pretty rudimentary questions, but they're legitimate questions. These people, like I said, we don't get trained, we don't know how to do this. Maybe people have only had family members doing care. So you have to start somewhere. It's great to be able to ask peers how to do it. But I also see the same people asking the same questions. And what I would encourage people to do, if they're asking, if people are having the same problem over and over, we need to learn how to do it better. We need to change our behavior, because if we're always having people who are quitting without notice, we're probably doing something wrong. So I think patting ourselves on the back is great, but always knowing we can do it better is what's going to drive us to be better employees. A lot of people don't even see themselves as employers, and they think we see ourselves as people who need someone to come in to help us. And I think that's a real disservice to us as well as to people who work for us.
Nancy, do you want to talk a little bit about the PACT and the support for attendance that's out there in our city? Just because I think, I don't know, I don't want to say, sometimes I get a little bit scared that there's a lot of almost like slaver mentality going on with some of the management that's going like in the group. I noticed that there's some folks that just kind of seem to think that their PCAs are almost like a slave, and I worry about that, and the valuing of the employee and and kind of putting yourself in their shoes kind of thing. I don't see that a lot, and I was listening to what Alana was saying, and sorry, I did it again. Anyway, but I think that that's true. I agree. I totally agree that we have to start to look at ourselves professionally, like Nancy does. We have to evaluate how we evaluate others, and being an employer, we have to do things a little differently. We have to be a little bit more ethical, and we have to value the people that are coming and helping us. And sometimes I get really scared by some of the responses that I see on Living with MD.
Well, Emily, without naming names, or can you in generalities give an example?
I have a problem with language. I hear my girl a lot in reference to the person that's helping. That makes me feel like it ticks me in a weird way. I asked my girl to do this for me. I think that there's some folks that have very, very, very high turnover. And I like Alana was saying, there's a lot of people that have like high turnover, and then there's patterns there. You got to start to say, maybe it's not them every single time. So I think that and then the introspection, like going, okay, I've had 20 different attendants in 1 year, and it just doesn't seem right. Something's going wrong, you know? And it's just like this kind of unwillingness to take any kind of responsibility for.
I'd like to read what Court just wrote. Most PAs have looked up to my mother for guidance, but now that I'm 18, I've taken over the hiring, firing, and rules. I feel like PAs should have a general schedule or idea of what they're expected to do on the job, not just, you do what I want when I want. Court, I really liked what you said.
Yeah, that's very mature.
Yeah, a lot of people say, well, it's my time, you need to do what I want. And it's like, wow, that's really not a good way to treat an employee. And I try to be very clear with my workers. I need you to be my hands, so I cannot predict all the tasks that you are going to do. But if there's something new coming up, I will say, hey, this is changing. I need help with A, B, or C. Are you comfortable with this? I try to let them know that I'm thinking about them. And if they're not comfortable with it, well, then may have a little conversation about, this is a deal breaker. This is a new thing. When I got a catheter and when I got an IV, I had to explain to people, this is a medical procedure that's sterile. I know this is not what you signed up for. This may be scary for you. I can bring someone in to train you. And if you still feel uncomfortable with it, we may have to end this working relationship. But I mean, being really direct about, this is what we're doing, even though anything might go. I mean, one day we may be cooking, the next day you may be driving, the third day you may be sitting at a conference with me at work and doing note-taking. I can't predict every little thing, and you need to be willing to do all those things. But the big changes, I try to give them a heads up about.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also put on the job description a list of tasks, but it always starts with assisting with cooking, assisting with,
right,
so that they know it's not just them doing it, that I'm involved too.
Right, and I agree. I do that as well, Nancy. And when I step out of that role, though, sometimes I'll say to someone, "Hi, I'm having a crappy day." I remember when my father passed away. I said, "My dad just died. I'm going to be a mess for quite a while. I need you just to cook. I need you to make decisions. I cannot pick a recipe. I will give you ingredients and general guidelines, but please just do it." You know, and so again, up front, being clear about what's changing.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and also, I like what you said there. I also, the language is really important to me. And so when I tend to do it like, well, let us get this, or we do this. And sometimes like my boyfriend will say, you realize like I'm doing all of this, like you're not doing any of it, like we're not taking out the garbage. I'm taking out the garbage. But it's this kind of, and what's the word? It's kind of the control freak in me that puts me involved in all the activities. So, you know, like, so I'm like, well, we're going to wash the floor, and then we're going to, you know, like, and it's really, it's kind of strange, but my language is very different, and it's, I guess it's subconscious, it's like a subconscious change. Like I just want to be part of it. And so I just insert myself into the pronoun or whatever. It's very strange, but,
well, I do the same thing actually, and I've had people, if you will, call me on it, not really confrontationally, but just to comment, like, I'll say, "Can you please help me pick up the pen that's on the floor?" And that, well, I'm doing it. I'm doing all of that task. So how are you helping with that? So
yeah. Or like, there's also the I always do, "Can you do me a favor?" Or can I, or I always say like, "Can you do me a favor?" I always have like certain tasks that where I say like, yeah, could you help me? Or would you, I phrase things weirdly where I'm always like asking, and Dan will just say, just do it. Just tell me to just do it. Like, don't make it directive. Like, wash the dishes, or, pick that up. And I'm like, no, I gotta say, can you do me a favor and pick that up? Like, I have to always front it with that. I have started to change that. I ask now, when you get a chance, could you help me do this? So I noticed that a lot of people that help me, they think that when I ask for something, I need it now. Like, even like, so if I say, can you turn on the light, even if it's like there's 4 other lights in the room, like they react right away, which is because they care about me and they want the light on. They don't realize I could wait like 10 minutes until they're done doing whatever. So I always have to say, hey, when you get a chance, when you get some time, would you mind doing this for me? Because I realize that some people are very, like, they take it very literally. Like, they want it now. And I think that, that can be kind of annoying. I can imagine if I add up all my favors that I ask, and I think about how somebody would have to feel like they have to jump every single time, like, that would be really obnoxious. So I've changed my language a little bit.
Yeah.
I try and group all my requests. So.
Oh, that's good. What do you group your requests?
Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting you, Alana.
No, it's fine. Go ahead. What were you saying?
I want to hear a group.
Like, if I call someone in to turn on the light, or turn off the light, then, there might be some other things that I may not need right at that moment that I'll probably need within the next hour or two. And I try and get all of that done right at that time, so then, I don't have to bug them again. And I feel pretty strongly about the bugging factor, because in my living situation, I do not directly employ the people who help me with my care. I'm in an adult foster home, so it's a little bit different. But yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I did that a lot in college, because they would sign up for shifts, and you'd have to kind of get everything in. Like, I would go in and I'd try to get it all done in one shot. And I kind of got out of that habit. But I like the idea of grouping requests. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's little stuff like this that really makes a difference. It really does. And then I try to always remember my thank yous. And I'm very, I don't care. If people think I'm too grateful and I shouldn't have to be this grateful, it's their job. I don't care. Like, I need to say, I'm always going to try to use my manners. I'm always going to say, could you do me a favor? I know it sounds annoying, but that's just how I am.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
I was thinking that myself today. I said, I grew up where you said please and thank you. And so I hear a lot of stuff from other consumers where they're like, get me water. And I'm like, whatever happened to please and thank you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not slaves.
My measure is I make sure I'm not feeling apologetic for my needs. So over the years, I've changed my language. Could you please maybe help me? I no longer say that anymore. I no longer. I know what you're talking about, Emily. Can you do me a favor? I don't say that very.
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean.
Yeah, because I feel like when I found the motivation behind that was being apologetic for my needs. And so I'm trying to be conscious about when I'm apologizing for my disability, for my needs. It also depends on who. You're talking about your boyfriend, not your employer. That's a different kind of relation. I mean, your employee. That's different. There are a few tasks that I cannot wait for, and I cannot say please, thank you for. For example, if I need to be suctioned, I just need to be able to say, I need to be suctioned. Please suction me now. Or sometimes I can only say suction, and there's not even the thank you, and it happens so often, particularly when I'm lying in bed and being fed. It's just part of the routine. He's reading his book. I'm on the laptop. He's feeding me breakfast. Suction. We don't even, we're in our own worlds. We're doing our rhythm. We're trying to stay out of each other's hair because it's 8:30 in the morning and we don't want to talk to each other. And so the rhythm is nice, but it really depends on who we're working with too. So, and that's the one thing that it's like, whatever you're doing, you need to stop it and suction me now. And they all know that. But everything else I do say, when you get a chance, would you? And I try not to say please every time. Not because I don't think I should, but people have told me it bothers them. So I said, okay, I'll try to back off on the please.
Okay. I always say
Alana,
please at all.
What's that, Don?
Yeah, this is so interesting, and I wanted to hear how you have been able to progress away from that, because what I have noticed through self-reflection is that I also do tend to be apologetic for my needs. I think some of it goes back to the difficulty that I have in finding caregivers with a low pay rate, with living in a rural area, different things like that. And so I totally identify with the comment that was made earlier about, I think that I take a lot more, so to speak, in the employer-employee relationship with a caregiver than, for example, that I might take in a normal business relationship as an employer when it's not a caregiver, when it's not a situation where I rely so heavily on that person. But I just wanted to ask you, Alana, how you have been able to change your language. You said you don't apologize anymore for your needs, and I agree. I hear both sides of what you're saying. I mean, I also believe in please and thank you and being genuinely grateful, yes, especially for good care. But on the other hand, I think that it actually does a disservice to constantly be apologizing for one's needs. And honestly, whenever it's a realistic expectation of a job duty. I mean, so how do you phrase things so that it's, grateful, or however you want to say that, but yet not apologizing for your needs?
Well, I think, the first step is having conversations like this with your peers. Recognizing that this is a problem that people with disabilities have. And I think the more we talk about it in groups like this and individually, and actually I've had conversations with some of my care providers who are close friends of mine. Some are friends, some are not. It varies. But one of the things that's interesting in my life, and I hire people who are interested in anthropology, sociology, people who are fascinated by human behavior. So it wouldn't be unusual for me to have a conversation with one of my workers to say, wow, I keep apologizing to you for interrupting you when you're doing the dishes. And wow, that's kind of, I really need you to suction me. So why am I apologizing to you? Like, I have that conversation in the moment with people who are receptive, people who get it. But I don't do that with everybody. So that's one way. You just keep talking about it. You keep thinking about it. I think maybe making little rules, like I've had to do exercises where for a whole week I'm not going to use a certain word. Like I might not use the word sorry because that's the one that I might be getting in my way. And I still might say I apologize, but you have to be more deliberate about saying I apologize, and it's something that you might say more deliberately in a situation that merits that you apologize. The grateful part would be, thank you. Everything went really well today. It's the end of the shift, and I want you that. I really appreciate it, especially blah blah blah. I think making sure the gratefulness comes through, but it doesn't have to be with every gesture, every activity, every little thing. It's their job they don't, when I write them a paycheck, they don't say, oh, wow, I'm so grateful that you put pen to paper and paid me. And they expect me to pay them. So, you know, keeping that in perspective, just thinking about it. I mean, Dawn, it's a really hard process. And it needs to be deliberate, and you need to be gentle with yourself about it and not feel bad that maybe you're saying I'm sorry too often, or please too often, or thank you too mindlessly. But being mindful when you say thank you versus saying thank you every time somebody does something, it becomes meaningless. So mindfulness is really important. And by all means, I'm still working on this. This is not a done deal. It's not something I've accomplished. I've just gotten pretty good at it.
Right. I really am. I'm loving this hangout so much. I just want to say that. One thing I don't know. We're hitting about an hour and 45 minutes. So
I have to eat dinner. I'm starving.
Yeah. No. It's okay. I think this is a good conversation. I think it should definitely be continued. I just wanted to mention a couple of things tonight before we close up. First of all, in the chat, there's a link to a Hangout feedback form. And so I would love it if you could fill that out and let me know what you thought of it. And so, because we're using that for our documentation and, you know, our reporting, so we can possibly grants and stuff like that. Another thing, let me think what else. Oh yeah, so NMD United, we have a couple things on the burners right now. One thing is that we did get a grant, and so we're about to do some hiring. Not big hiring, but little hiring. So just be on the lookout for that. We're going to be hiring someone to do our web design, and someone to be a project developer, contracted project developer for us. And we're only hiring within this community. So so I'm very excited. And then another thing is we recently partnered with a listening / peer counseling site called 7 Cups of Tea. And Max, I know you're a certified listener, but basically it allows you to talk one-on-one with people. And so we have our own little page set up for NMD United folks, people with neuromuscular disabilities. And so they can go and meet with another listener that has a neuromuscular disability and have, you know, and have a listening session. And so it's kind of a nice one-on-one alternative to the group stuff. And
it could be totally anonymous.
And it's totally anonymous. And so Max is a trained listener, and we're recruiting other trained listeners that will be willing to be listed on our page. And we want to try to get as many shifts or, you know, people on it as much as possible, so that way people can go and stress, you know, just let go and talk and vent and just let it all out. So I'm very excited about that. So I just wanted to share those couple of things. And thank you so much for coming out. And Alana, thank you for co-hosting with me. Like I said, I couldn't think of anybody better to do this with, so I'm so excited. So
well, thank you for coordinating it, Emily.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Does anyone have any last things that they want to say or offer?
This is Dawn. I just want to say that I think it's been a great hangout, and I thank you guys for hosting it.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to meet you, Court. Court, will you mind telling us your last name so I can like tag you on Living with MD as a thank you? Oh, is it P-U-G-H?
Pew? Is that right? Pew?
Oh, Pew. Very cool. Thank you. And thank you for the compliment on my crazy frilly hair. My hair's a little crazy. Anyway, but I appreciate it. And
I wanted to tell people, if you are interested in starting an emergency attendant program in your community, I did post the link for the Berkeley emergency program in the chat. So there is a website.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, it was a grassroots effort. The way we justified the funding is we approached the city and did an analysis of how many paramedic runs were actually attendant care needs. And they were able to realize that a $450 paramedic run to help somebody get off the floor made more sense to send an attendant out instead. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of disabled people here, so it was a shift of funding for the city to spend less money on emergency paramedics and then less on attendant care.
Wow, that's fabulous.
It's
Anthony, you hear that?
Yeah. Wow. Good idea.
All right,
guys.
All right. Well, take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Good night. Good night, Christine. Good night, Dawn. Good night, Cora. Good night, Jasmine.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.